All right, good evening, everybody. If we can stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everybody. Report of the chairman. I just had one thing. Our next meeting is slated to be in 2 weeks, but it's the first
All
day.
participants are muted. All participants are muted. All participants are muted.
But it's slated is the first day back from everybody being away for spring break. So Joe and I were talking today and thought it would be prudent because people are away, especially people at central office, that we may not have everything prepared, to postpone our meeting for the following Monday, being the fourth Monday, as opposed to the third Monday because of the spring break holiday. What?
You couldn't even get it out that Friday before.
Right.
Yeah.
So is everybody okay with that? We just don't want to be not prepared for that meeting and not have everything prepared.
So you're talking change the 19th to the 26th?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's fine.
Is everybody okay with that?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Then we will change that, Joe.
Got it.
Okay. We will move on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you, Jerry. Second by Christine. Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Great. Thank you. Motion passes. We will move on to our reports of our committees and liaisons. And up first is our MASIC board representatives.
Good evening, Board of Education. So in terms of winter sports, the color guard team ended their season with championships last Saturday, and MASIC boys hockey also ended their season with a win, 5-3 against Brookfield, Bethel, and Danbury co-op, and the boys basketball team lost 70-50 to Notre Dame of Fairfield. And as winter sports come to a close, spring sports have been starting up, and tomorrow will be the MASIC girls tennis team's first scrimmage against Shelton.
Spring musical auditions for Meet Me in St. Louis are ongoing. Congratulations to the 55 new members that were inducted to the MASIC chapter of the National Honor Society last week. And finally, spring break will be next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is that being televised, this induction?
The induction was recorded.
It was recorded. There should be a link going out. I'll check on that.
Thank you. I didn't see one. And the pictures that I received were not great from my child. Anybody else have any committee reports? Nick?
Chair and Dave and myself attended the Board of Finance workshop where the Board of Ed presented their budget, and I'm sure that will come up later, so we'll discuss that later. It's
Great.
a very informative session.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, we will move on to public participation. I'll start here first. All right. Paul, anybody on the call?
There is not.
All right, so we will move on to the report of the superintendent.
Thanks. I'll ask Darlene to come up and just give a quick special ed update.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to start with the finances tonight. You may have noticed that you don't have my monthly spreadsheet in the packet today, and that's because we're working with the finance department to true up all of our accounts. It's a very difficult process, as you know, things fluctuate in special ed constantly. But based on what we know now from this school year and due to COVID, we will have some savings in special education as we did last year with COVID. There are several students who did not fully participate in their programs this year, either because of medical concerns or the opt-out into full remote. Some parents chose that for their children. There definitely will be savings in transportation, same as last year. I do want to point out, as I did on Thursday night to the Board of Finance, that we are averaging 12 PPTs a day throughout the district. This is the PPT season from March to June, and we will continue to have PPTs. So there is a potential for any unanticipated program changes that we may not know right up until June.
Do you normally make holiday?
Well, throughout the district, yes, because
This time of year, that's normal?
that's normal. Yeah, it's PPT season. Well, from March to June, that's the heaviest season. And when you consider that we have 5 schools and they're each having a couple a day, it's so. The enrollment numbers, I pointed out also at the Board of Finance meeting on Thursday night that our numbers from October 1st to March 31st, we have 23 additional students who qualify for special education services this year. In the month of March, 2 new students registered in the district, 7 students were withdrawn or dismissed from services, and 11 students who were referred were made eligible, bringing our total to 469 students.
Thanks, Beth.
Question?
David?
Darlene, I was gonna point that out too, that 469 number, that's really high. That's about, I had like 430 in my head from a year or so ago, right?
Yeah.
So that's significantly higher this
it
year.
keeps going up.
Slide, do you
Yeah.
think that has something to do with that?
Well, no, we typically throughout the year it's about the same amount of kids that we make eligible, but I think that our biggest increase is kids that are moving in already with IEPs. So
That 468 is where we were when we ended last school year.
right. Yeah, we were
Up
at
top.
468 last school year, and then with the graduations and kids who moved out, we went back down. But
So that's interesting. It's not so much newly identified situations so much as people who are moving in with IEPs in place.
Well, the students who are found eligible, those 11 students, a lot of that is preschool. This is the time of year when
Yeah.
preschoolers, children who are involved in birth to 3, they turn 3, we have to accept them on their 3rd birthday, so a lot of those students, start to enroll now. Our numbers in preschool will continue to grow until right through the summer, so.
Yeah.
Right, because they come to us when they're starting on their 3rd birthday.
Correct.
We
Right.
take over,
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
that
It
is.
goes,
Yeah, we
graduates
have-
from birth to 3 to the
Right.
10.
Yeah, we have PPTs, we have to have PPTs scheduled 90 days before they turn 3. And that, so that we have a program in place so that when they turn 3, we can take them right in. So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Dar.
Thank you.
I just wanted to give another update on our second vaccine clinic, which was held Thursday at St. Jude's. I really just want to, I can't thank enough the emergency operations team, Keith White, Ken Kellogg, Nancy Brault, Bill Holsworth, Craig Hirsch, the whole Department of Health team, and then all the volunteers. We had a whole bunch of volunteers from the community, a lot of people that came out and just really made it. Both days, I mean, the first day in March, and then the second day on last Thursday, just really, really seamless. People got right in, got their shots, got out. For the most part, I haven't heard really many horror stories. I'm sure I could be missing some, but I think most people kind of had a little bit of achies and, we're feeling better, within about 24 hours or so. I'd estimate that we're at about 80% of our, at least, I would suggest we're at least with just our own clinic, right around 80% of our staff that are in 2 weeks will be fully vaccinated. That doesn't include some of the staff members that had already been vaccinated before this, our nurses and some other staff who had aged in and whatnot. One of the things that, go ahead, Shannon.
Would you say it's about 100% of the people who wanted to be?
Every single person that wanted to be was able to participate. We had a couple people at the first vaccine that got quarantined like a couple days before, and they couldn't participate. We had some similar kind of scenarios with the second vaccine, but once again, the health department has been great, and they just kind of talked to Jack and I, especially Jack. Jack did a lot of the coordinating for it, and Jack was able to help get them into the other town clinics that were going on. So if someone missed their second vaccine this week, they said, hey, we can get them into one of the upcoming town clinics. And it looks like they're going to be using St. Jude now for the foreseeable future for that. So this should, this should really help a lot with staffing. The CDC guidelines are that if you are exposed, if you're fully vaccinated and you're exposed, you no longer need to quarantine, provided you're not having any symptoms. So that will be, very helpful when we come back from the break. With staffing situations, we're going to start having, the questions about students getting vaccinated, and the same rules apply to them. If they're fully vaccinated, they will not have to quarantine after they're exposed. I know there's a lot of high school, especially junior and senior parents with prom and graduation coming up, that are running out trying to get their kids vaccinated, so they don't miss some of those opportunities at the end of the year. Only other thing kind of related in this was the one of the things that's given us a little bit of consternation was the travel advisory with April break coming up. And very interesting that the state removed the travel advisory, which required you to get tested upon your return, and then they said, well, follow the CDC recommendations, but it's not enforceable by executive order. If you saw the email I sent out to families recently, we are still asking families, to get tested if they do travel. The CDC did come up with new guidelines this week too about fully vaccinated people can travel without restriction now. They do not need to be tested or quarantined when they return. Nick?
On the second vaccine clinic, so obviously the district knows who has been vaccinated. Now there are other staff members who may have gotten the vaccine outside of these clinics. Do you know who hasn't been vaccinated?
Not specifically. We don't know who hasn't. It's as you, I'm sure you know, it's a very sensitive subject. But if it comes to issues of quarantine, we can ask people if they were vaccinated.
Okay, that was my question.
Without asking why they did or why they didn't, or
yeah, no, not why or why not, but if in a quarantine situation,
it's a reasonable question to ask.
Okay.
Yep, and the guidance is yes, you can ask the question, expect a truthful answer.
Okay.
Yep. That's all I have.
Okay, great. Did you?
Do you want me to?
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, no.
You want me to introduce Sheila and Ann?
Yep.
So I think Nick, at a previous meeting, I don't think it was the last meeting, it might have been the meeting before, had asked about social emotional learning, acronym SEL. It's been pretty much a primary initiative, I'd say throughout the whole country, let alone just the state and definitely in Monroe. We know that the pandemic has, really, made it really difficult for kids with relationships and whatnot, just to have connection. So, it has been a major emphasis in Monroe. It is probably stealing part of Ann's presentation right now by saying it's kind of the SEL is kind of the language of the guidance counselors, but this isn't it's not just a guidance counselor initiative. That's why I asked Sheila to join Ann. So we can look at it from the perspective of what has our guidance department been doing to promote social emotional learning for kids and give them those coping strategies that they need during this difficult time. And then what does that look like in the classroom? Because our teachers are doing things as well. Everybody has kind of embraced social emotional learning. So I will turn this on and turn it over to Ann and Sheila.
Actually, Joe, if you don't mind, I'm going to need to steal the mouse because I'm going to hit that video and then come back. Is it over here? There's one over here.
There's questions.
Is this it?
Oh, is that it? Yep.
Is it on? Perfect. Thank you. Excuse me. Sorry for having that. Sorry about that. So as you know, Joe introduced, we are here to talk to you about social emotional learning. And I promise I'm not going to read all my slides to you, but I am going to read this one, just so that we're all under the same, looking at SEL and social emotional learning with the same eyes. So social emotional learning is a process through which children and adults acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. There's a lot in that definition. But that's, as Joe said, what the guidance department does through school counseling and what our teachers have been doing a lot of this year as well. It's kind of hard to see the little parts of this circle, but you can see that on the outside we have our community, and then you move into the families and caregivers, then you move into the schools, then the classrooms. Inside that is all the parts of SEL. We have self-awareness. That's that identifying of emotions and self-confidence that students are learning how to do. Self-management, impulse control, stress management. How do they work through those emotions? Responsible decision-making, identifying problems, analyzing situations, and problem solving. Relationship skills, all about communication, social engagement, teamwork. And social awareness is that empathy, perspective, and appreciating diversity. So all of that and all of those people help support social emotional learning. We're going to take a look at each of our levels, and Ann and I are going to go back and forth, kind of talking about what it looks like through the counseling, school counseling lessons, and what it looks like in the classrooms.
So this is just a typical year of comprehensive school counseling lessons in the elementary school. I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. The calming down strategies. The kids are all taught how to identify their feelings. They're given coping strategies on how to be able to deal with situations or conflicts and be able to process them differently. A lot of what the school counselors in elementary school do is what makes a good friend. How do you be a good friend to somebody else? It's just a constant evolution of a couple of those topics. But we bring those through K through 2. And then our 3rd grade to 5th grade, some of the things they focus on, once again, we focus on identifying all of our feelings, K through 12, but a little bit more evolution, a little bit more vocabulary into the feelings, a little more in depth about how you're feeling, why you're feeling, how to do conflict resolution and things along that lines. The growth mindset model is really big in the elementary schools when they're really struggling. They want to give up instead of saying, I'm going to give up now. I'm going to keep trying. Mm-hmm. So changing your language, changing your narrative. I have found, because I've been primarily in the high school, is that the elementary schools, since I've immersed myself in the elementary schools, they just speak social emotional learning all the time, even pre-COVID. This is all they do, not just the school counselors, but the teachers, the administrators. Some of the things we change in our Counselor Corner newsletter, that's sent out every month. They talk about like virtual play dates with kids, how to have a virtual play date successfully, how to, in remote learning, how do you successfully relate to others in the classroom and things like that. Gratitude. These are some things that came out of COVID to make sure the kids are aware that, yes, this is a challenge we're all being faced with. However, if we work together, stay together, we can all be successful through it, or at least feel better knowing we're connected to each other. A lot of what we try to share is also with parents as well. So the parents and the family and the students are all being educated on how to help your child succeed. Wellness Wednesdays, elementary school counselors are sending out Wellness Wednesdays to the teachers about SEL, about how
to take care of themselves, because it's really been, as you all know, this has been an incredibly challenging year. It's so many ups and downs. I mean, we're on the other side of it now, or at least I feel that way, but really there was a lot to process. And so every Wednesdays, the counselors would send something out to help the teachers through all of the great work that they've been doing all year. One of the nice things that came out of COVID was the implementation of the mood meter. There were a few of us in the district who were trained in the mood meter a couple years ago. It's we went to the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and this was one of the strategies they used. And it was basically, if you can identify your feelings, you can get to a place to improve your feelings or to achieve the feeling you need to be successful in something. So one of the nice things, every elementary school counselor brought these to all the teachers in the elementary school, and every day the kids walk in and they identify where they are on the mood meter. Like, that's pretty impressive. Every day the teachers love this in the elementary schools, the kids look forward to it, and they sort of, it's not something they write down, but they do notice, hey, you know, Ann's coming in angry every day. You know, I wonder what's going on. And so they have some data points to share with the counselor, and then we could have an intervention. So this has been very successful. This is the mood meter. It's carried through K through 12. We're in different evolutions of the mood meter. You know, we haven't fully implemented it in the high school, but down in the elementary school, absolutely. Middle school, they've introduced it, and we've introduced it to the staff. We were in the process of doing that last year before the COVID. So that's been a wonderful intervention in the elementary schools.
Now to take a look at how that has kind of blended into the classrooms. One of the things that the State Department of Education realized this year was that our children really needed some SEL supports. So they kind of pulled back a little bit on the teacher evaluation process, where teachers used to have to pay attention to a goal of academic achievement. My students are going to go up in SBAC from this to this, and that's their goal, and they're going to work towards that, or other assessments that we use in the classroom. The State Department has said that, you know, as of last March, these students weren't in school, and students were struggling. So when it comes to the school year, we need to make the focus on SEL. So teachers wrote goals for SEL for themselves for this year that they're using in the classroom. And at the elementary level, K through 5, it's the mood meter. You know, like Ann just showed it to you, you've got some examples. Students come in, they'll put their clip with their name on it to say, this is where I am. Or they've got, some classes have it as a folder, and they keep adding each month. And when the kids come in, they color the box. And again, then they can kind of see where are there patterns that on certain days that I'm having trouble. You know, Mondays may be tough for me because I've been away all weekend, or after a long weekend it's tough for me, or something like that. It also is being used in specials classrooms. They go into music and they'll see a mood meter. Some teachers have kind of played with it. The picture in the middle, you know, it is a kindergarten classroom that has things that might be a glitch compared to a bummer, compared to a disaster, to be able to, you know, how bad is the problem of something that's happened to you in the classroom? You know, your building fell over. Well, you know, is it that awful? Classroom teachers have been doing an amazing job using the mood meter, reading stories about social emotional learning, talking about characters in their books, and asking them to kind of match the feeling that that character had to the mood meter. Compare it to themselves. If this happened to me, how would I feel? Using a lot of I feel statements and getting students to understand what the vocabulary is that's on the mood meter so that they can express themselves. Teachers have been asking students to collaborate with each other. So you've got the picture of the two students who are both on Chromebooks, but they've got the divider between them. You've got the picture above it of a student in school, in person, who's collaborating with the student who's at home. So we've got collaboration and talking, because unfortunately with a lot of the COVID piece, students have been isolated. So teachers have been looking for opportunities to get students engaged and working together. They have been creating bulletin boards about kindness. They've been drawing their emotions and drawing pictures, sad and happy. And they've been working on this bulletin board is Dear Lonely Student, and expressing feelings on how you could feel better. How could you talk to somebody who you don't know how to talk to? They're really doing a lot of discussing about emotions and feelings. The picture down here, they drew pictures to go with the Meals on Wheels to make people feel better that they were coming out as a community service project. A second grade classroom, and you won't be able to hear it because I can't even hear it on my laptop all the way up, but I do want you to just see it. This was a compliment circle. So the students are going around giving compliments to each other, and they're learning how to give a compliment, but also how to receive it. And then how does that make you feel? And how did you make somebody else feel by the compliment that you gave them? So there's been a lot of work with that going on in our schools. Elementary, as Ann said, has always been an SEL place. They're always talking about feelings. They're making more of a connection in the literature to the feelings of characters. We used to focus a lot on character traits, and they still do. But the difference between a trait and a feeling, and helping students understand what that is. They're also building vocabulary, because not just using the word sad, sorrowful, I'm mourning something. Getting students to use other words. I'm happy, I'm excited, and really just building on the vocabulary and things too. So there's a lot of SEL going on, especially in the elementary school. And then we hit the middle school and it continues up.
Yeah, so the middle school has been extraordinarily busy with SEL. This is a typical school counseling lesson. Grade 6, 7, and 8 in STEM and Jockey Hollow do similar things, but they are structured a little bit differently. The major difference in middle school SEL is the school counselors, along with the administrators and teachers, every week they have a lion's den, and it's like an advisory. And in this advisory, there's SEL lessons for the entire school, STEM and Jockey Hollow. It's lots of work, but it talks about all the great things about empathy, gratitude, respect, self-care. It's a regular discussion, a daily discussion with kids. They're moving into Rock Week, which is random opportunities of caring and kindness. So the lessons haven't been, usually we'll do lots of career lessons. We haven't gotten to some of those because of our attention to SEL and taking care of individuals, because there really has been quite an outreach in the middle school, high school, to those kids who are struggling. And that has been the primary focus, is to make sure everyone is okay. And individual counseling, family counseling, getting kids connected to therapists and people that can help in the community. And that's really been our driving intervention at the middle school. But those are some of the things that we've been doing down there.
As we move into examples in the classroom, teachers have been using the remote Wednesdays for doing a lot of SEL work, having students interact, really a focus on communicating. So putting them into breakout rooms so that they can talk to each other, or handing them puzzles like the little graphic up on the right, and asking them to figure out what that says, or work with family members to figure out pie in the sky, not up to par, turning over a new leaf, some of those tricky words, and see if they can figure it out by working together and collaboratively. Teachers have also been sending out, rather than having students, clip their on the mood meter in the elementary, in the middle school they're sending out Google Forms asking students to say, how are you feeling? How are things going? How are you handling, the isolation, the remote learning? They've also put in place a lot of, on those remote days, some lunch groups to get students engaged, try and pull kids in who might be, struggling a little bit with the remote piece, by doing the mixtape Mondays, trivia Tuesdays, imposter Thursday, Fido Friday with showing your pets. So a lot of fun things to try and get students engaged. Again, working on the gratitude. A bulletin board full of Post-it notes. You can write a Post-it note to give a compliment or a nice thing to somebody else. If you're having a tough day, you walk by, you take one of those to remind yourself that it's going to be okay and you're doing your best, and keep working hard. a teacher example, showing some movie shorts, just like quick little blurbs to get kids engaged. Take a look at that part of the video and say, how did that character feel? How does that relate to either your own life, or how does it relate to a book that we're reading and the characters in our book, so making those literature connections. A lot of different things to get students engaged in talking to each other and also reflecting on their feelings, like Ann said too. And then we move up to the high school.
So at the high school, the biggest change for the school counselors, this is a typical counseling lessons, of some of which we've gotten to this year, some of which we haven't, because we've been doing lots of outreach, individual counseling, getting these kids motivated, keeping them engaged, making sure they're okay. But we have all a Google Classroom about to every single student. So every single student has been reached out to one of the counselors, and it's a wellness resources, doing our relaxation breathing, our coping strategies. What can you do to de-stress yourself? You know, each of us had created our own slide to say, hey, what do I do to de-stress? This is what I do. I go meditate, I pray, I go play basketball, I go listen to music, like, so the kids can sort of identify with the adults to say, hey, we're stressed too. These are maybe might be helpful to you. So it's, once again, trying to connect with everybody, trying to make everybody realize we're in this together. That's a big, big part of it. And keeping everybody sort of on track. You know, the seniors want to get to college. So we were processing college applications. We met with all our juniors to talk about what they're looking forward to next year. We talked to sophomores about their transcripts and their goals and things of that nature. So I think there's a stability to say, hey, even though we're living this right now, we're still looking forward to the future. There's still hope, and we're trying to keep them on the program, as well as parents, offering FAFSA financial aid nights and sophomore parent nights and admission nights and ACT nights. And, you know, amidst all of this, we're still trying to talk about the other as well, which I feel the kids appreciate, because we've had other discussions about how they're feeling and doing.
As we look into the classrooms at the high school, they're watching TED Talks, those inspirational conversations that you can hear in some of those quick little TED Talks. They're watching clips from videos like in Churchill's Darkest Hour about never giving up. They've got monthly themes about gratitude. You can see that going across all three levels. Reading challenges, walking challenges, COVID diaries, silver lining journals. What's the silver lining out of COVID? What did you learn? And students are talking about spending more time with families, you know, younger siblings, or playing games, doing our, painting around the house, or whatever odd jobs mom and dad have come up with you to keep you busy. A lot of conversations too. Teachers have really been working. So much of what students do today is, that phone and texting. They're not turning and talking to each other. So making opportunities for students to engage in conversations, again, whether it's breakout rooms or if they're in the classroom, turning and talking, masked and distanced, but you can still have a conversation with somebody. So they've been working on that. And again, how do you de-stress? Asking classes, and every student puts up a little post on the Jamboard. How do you de-stress, and what are you doing? As we move to the high school, there's the mood meter up on the right, but that's has only been shared with staff at this point, because how are they feeling? Remember, SEL goes beyond just with the students, but it's also our staff. And for them to put words behind how they're feeling about how things are going too has been important. Again, we've got those pet videos like we had at the middle school. Those have moved up to the high school as well. Trivia Tuesday, the Masked Singer. We had the horse game, which Ann was involved with.
We lost.
Playing a little basketball, Steve, too. And again, trying to pull little clips of videos and different things to motivate and engage students, even at the high school level too. So it's been very, very busy year with SEL.
And our social workers doing extraordinary outreach, just PSA announcements. How do you take care of somebody? How do you take care of yourself? Any 211 suicide? Are you concerned about somebody? Please come talk to us. What are some things as a family you can do in this pandemic to connect? Or if you're concerned about others, she's doing lots of individual counseling, lots of family counseling, group counseling. She started up our self-esteem, social, and GSA groups, and she continues to put out to the community the importance of mental health and self-care. So she's doing a wonderful job. You know, the whole staff really is doing a tremendous job to keep this focus.
And our
Yeah.
social worker is pre-K-12, so she's working with families across all levels. And that circle that I showed you in the beginning about SEL had all the layers. So when it comes to, who's providing SEL, it's really everybody. It's everybody who works in our schools, but it's also people in our community. It's parents, it's students, it's everybody working together to help support not only the students, but the adults as we work through this pandemic and how things have changed. And that's a quick overview of different ways in which SEL is presented, not only through our school counseling, but also through our classroom teachers.
So I loved it. Thank you very much. I loved it. I thought from the get-go when COVID first hit that there was going to be some seen and unforeseen silver linings coming out of it, like you guys were saying. And I was hoping that, and I do think like time with family, extra time with family and stuff has been one of them. And I was hoping that there might be some kind of a change, some sort with the education department, like at the higher levels. And it kind of sounds like there is. Like there's less focus on standardized tests and the SBACs.
For this year.
And making the social emotional learning, which is like without that, like that's your foundation, that's your building block. All the other stuff isn't going to matter without that piece. So I'm like thrilled to see it being recognized at a higher level and stressed and stuff. I think that's awesome. I early on in the COVID days downloaded the Calm app, the meditation app on my phone, and it has like for all different things like sleep, anxiety, stress, relationship with self, with others, like happiness, 7 days of happiness, like gratitude's huge. Like if you wake up every morning and you're thinking about what am I grateful for, it's hard to be in a bad mood or sad or wallowing or anything when your mind's already trained to be thinking about what you're grateful for. And the meditation apps for me just like, because they have long ones, short ones, you could do whatever, it's worth
Yeah, the
that
Calm
time.
one. Yeah,
I was going to say the counselors have done a
Yeah,
lot
we
with that
put that
too.
out.
I love
Megan
it.
Skin, one of our counselors, actually shared that with our staff like last year or something. It's
So
a good
I know
one.
Headspace is another one. I just
Headspace, so
downloaded
maybe it was
Calm.
yeah, yep.
But it's for everything. It's all different. You could do 7 days of kindness or 7 days of gratitude or whatever, and it's the breathing and everything and being focused in the present moment. And I'm really liked your presentation a lot.
And the year before, actually 2 years ago, we started with mindfulness in our elementary schools. So our elementary teachers had already been trained with that and was working in their classrooms with students on that mindful breathing. And having music in the background, having students go for walks before they have to sit and do a lot of, a writing assignment or something like that. So that piece of the mindfulness training kind of leading into all this SEL work has really been very helpful.
Like it's such a big part of the elementary schools even before COVID, and it's like, okay, we're working with the staff at the high school. How do we bring this in? Because it's not an easy age to like bring these topics, SEL and mindfulness and stuff. I actually prefer with the meditations on the app, you can choose like music in the background or features. I always just like the quiet and the voice. Like that's what I personally choose, but they have the choices. But maybe like even little meditations or something with the high school. I don't know.
Yeah, the teachers have been doing a great job identifying what works for them because it's not something they're necessarily all of them are comfortable with. Some are, some aren't. And so they've been trying, resources have been brought to them through administration, through their ILs, through themselves, and then they sort of run with it. And they've really been very successful, and the kids appreciate it. That's been huge.
That's a hard age because I see a lot of like kind of withdrawn is what I'm seeing. Is it's not necessarily angry or so much or anything at that age. I've been seeing like some withdrawn or not seeing, not interacting face to face with people as much and stuff. So it's like, and it's probably hard for them. Maybe some kids in high school talk about it easier than others might hold it in. But
I think, Marie Blake, I think Marie's here, but she was baking cookies with her kids at one point. She's like, let me do something to,
Yeah.
so, and this is what people tapped into. And, that's not been a norm, I don't think, for the teacher nor the student. So it really did open up people's hearts and minds. And
that's perfect.
It
Throw away
was-
that, not throw away, but let's put the aspects and any of these standardized tests, like, and focus on, I'm not, you know what I mean. I'm so
We
not
do.
being articulate right
We
now,
do.
but
We know
that's not
exactly
the
what
most
Joe's saying
important
about
thing,
the
and this is
money.
great. I know, I'm
That's
sorry.
all
I'm sorry, but I'm just glad to hear it.
And Ann and the guidance staff did a presentation to the special ed PTA a few weeks ago. And Ann starts the presentation. I asked her not to necessarily do it today because it was about 8 or 9 minutes, but it was great. Walking them through a breathing exercise with them. That was pretty powerful stuff.
David, I saw you next, and then Nick, I'll go to you.
Thank you. Two quick questions. What have we done and what should we be doing for staff? Number one. And number two, I know we'll continue this the rest of the year, I'm assuming, and into next year. What's the expectation that you're hearing in your profession as, how long do we need to run this for? Like when is normal going to be back? I know the kids are doing so much better now being back in.
Did you say
and,
forever?
with some
Sorry.
activities and stuff.
I
Yeah.
said, well, forever, this is important, whether we're normal or not. This is important forever.
It is, but yeah.
To an extent. I
To the
think.
Yeah, yeah,
what's
yeah.
the extension of that?
Yeah.
What do you think that is?
I think SEL is a part of how we learn. So I believe that this should carry on. It should be part of our everyday that we work with kids, just like the elementary school. It's not even something you talk about anymore because it's what we do. It's how we treat each other. It's how
It's your culture and climate in the building.
culture and
Yes.
climate in
Yes.
the building. So
And how you,
I foresee this like being the impetus to keep it going and evolving. And of course, we're going to get more content and curriculum back in when all of us are in 24/7. If we don't have this to,
That's a little bit of my
Yeah,
concern.
right. Yeah.
Is that this seems to be embedding itself a little bit more than academics. And perhaps, it's even getting to, I questioned what my role was as a parent when you were going through the elementary section. So if I'm the parent and I'm raising the child, right, that's my role. Your role is to educate them. Okay, so that was a concern that I had.
but they can't educate when they're.
Hey, just one more question, Jerry, quick. Can I get a copy of that deck? Because I did have some questions that I'd like to visit with you
Sure.
on afterwards.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if I can interject, this is nothing new. So for all of you sitting here, 35 years ago, we had SSR at Chalk Hill and at Jockey Hollow. It's just a name,
Yeah,
it's a progression.
yeah.
I didn't mean it's just a name change. I did not
Right.
mean that. But we have, for those of you that say it's too much touchy-feely, that's what education is.
Understood? I understand
That's
that.
what it is.
Yeah.
It's saying you did a good job, you didn't do a good job, but this is important. This is, we
What
kind
was
of,
that book Jim Agostine had us read many years ago? Remember that?
Finished lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Finished lessons when Finland, am I right? Was it Finland
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Sweden?
It was Finland.
Yeah.
What the gist of it was that they weren't trying to build the best, to be the number one school system, but they were addressing the kid as a whole, looking at academics, looking at the kid as
Feelings
the whole,
yeah.
all of it, and building off of that, and then they wound up with an incredibly, I don't know if it was the number one school system, but they wound up with a really, really good.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta have emotional intelligence. You could be the smartest kid in Connecticut and go to Harvard or whatever and just be a total failure.
Have a
because
breakdown.
you don't have those great people skills and emotional intelligence.
Right.
So.
Can I go back to Dave? Dave had a two-part
Staff.
question.
Oh, sorry.
So at the beginning of the school year, we had 5 full days for staff development for
Yeah.
teachers. The first day was all teacher SEL, the entire day. And then the second day was about student SEL. So first we had to get the teachers to feel comfortable. Then it was, how do you think about what this is going to look like in your classroom? Then we moved over to the technology that we were going to need to learn to make sure that everybody understood what that looked like. But we had a spot every single day that was on the teacher SEL, all 5 days. So teacher, students, then it was the technology, then it was actually trying to work to figure out like your first 2 weeks. What are lessons going to look like? How are you going to start? Because you've got half your class in and half your class is home. This is a whole new world for us. How are we going to do this? So Thursday and Friday, we're working with teams, like either by content area or grade level, trying to create the lessons. But we had blocks through the middle of the day that were all SEL for staff. And it changed with what the topic was, of course, the whole week. And then as we hit election day, which was our other staff development day, we had more time for that as well. And principals have been bringing it up during faculty meetings, checking in on SEL, because teachers are doing it as their goals. We've had, after observations, talking about where they are with things. We've had mid-year check-ins on goals, and we'll have end-of-the-year check-in. And it's, where are you on your SEL goal with your students, but it's also, how are you doing and how's it going this year? So it's a combination conversation with them.
Yeah, and I encourage you to continue that with all staff. Yeah, thank you.
Next.
Thank you both for coming this evening. I think it was very educational to kind of see really what is happening. And I did have this question really it was almost in the fall too, because when we were in that different educational mode, that different educational model, we were very concerned about academics, but there was a big concern about not only social isolation for students, but also for all of us. And I think too that, in 2021, I think a lot of this adds to kind of a cultural shift that has happened kind of in the last 10 to 15 years, where, talking about your emotions and seeking out help is I don't want to say in, but it's much more kind of in than it was 10 to 15 years ago. I mean, there are ads on TV about, LeBron James says, if you need a therapist, I'm in therapy, if you need a therapist. I mean, that would, 10 years ago, that we wouldn't hear about that or see that. So I think all of this is really informative to see what we're doing here, but it also kind of adds to kind of where we're headed just in general. And I think a lot of students, especially high school students, are kind of taking the initiative upon themselves to add to this. So like I follow on Instagram like Humans of Massic, which is like pretty powerful. Like I know they don't post a lot, but it's really, I mean, they have hundreds of followers, and the students are following, and you hear someone's like story, and it's a really powerful thing. As we kind of move into the next academic year, and I'm calling them the COVID cohort, but as the group moves now into the next school year, are there any like additional trainings that you all could go to or that staff could go to? I know like the mood meter and something came from a school at Yale or a program at Yale. And is there an opportunity to maybe use some of the coronavirus relief funds for some of these activities? Because I think going into the next academic year, I think it's going to be kind of equal to what we're seeing now, what we're going to need. Because when students come back, hopefully we're full in, everything's good to go in September. It could be a shock to the students, especially those, we were talking the other day about first graders who, they'll be going into third grade, right? So first graders who went out last year in March, who had their second grade this year in this hybrid, who are going to be like going into third grade. It's a very transitional kind of age. So
we've actually had multiple conversations about the ESSER 2 funds, and one of the things is to have more staff trained in the ruler is one of the things on the list that we were just talking about, because we did it as a small team, and then you can send school-based teams. So we didn't get to that part because then COVID hit last year. So we weren't able to take it to the next step, but we were talking about doing that with some of those funds going forward, actually.
Okay. I think that's going to be really important. I think as some of those funds are available through 2023, if we have them, if we don't use them for other things, which I'm sure we're going to, I think items like these are going to be really important for students going forward. And I mean, I know at Fairfield U, they're already prepping us for the incoming freshman class is going to be unlike a class you've ever seen before. And we don't have anywhere near the type of training that we're given a textbook and kind of said good luck, but this is really, really informative, and I think as we go into the fall, it's going to be even more forward. So thank you.
Thanks. Anybody else have anything else?
Alan did.
Alan.
You mentioned mindfulness. Do you actually have someone trained in that?
We had, it was through Becky Kasisko had found this person through her daughter out of the Boston area who came down and actually trained our elementary teachers at all 3 buildings over the course of 2 years. Because again, they came in and trained staff first. So like we did it, we had the 2 days in August. So they came on the first August day. Then they came back on, whether it was election day or they came back on our March day, because that was typically when our second one was. They would try to do it on the March one if they could, because then it gave teachers from August until March to kind of work on all the things that they taught about themselves to understand. Then they came back the following year, and then they taught them about how to do it in classrooms on that second time. And then the person came back a third time and actually went in and out of classrooms and worked with teachers.
All in the elementary level?
All in the elementary level. And
Is
we
there an
did, so
opportunity
it went
to-
over a couple of years because again, they were kind of tag teaming, did one school and then moved on, started the next school and moved on to, and so it took us almost 3 years to get all 3 elementary schools through it.
And the same person did the
Same person did all of it, yep. And it was great when she came back to do the lessons in the classroom, observe the lessons that teachers were doing in the classroom, or to do lessons. It was kind of a combination of both. Like I know in Fawn Hollow, I was there the day, and the guidance counselor actually walked around with the person and watched the lessons. And in each classroom, she did a different lesson. And like she'd walk into maybe your class, Alan, it was math, and she'd go across the hall into Jeff's class, and now it's writing. So she'd do a math mindfulness lesson and then roll right into something with writing. It was absolutely amazing to watch her work. I know at Fawn Hollow, because Becky was there at the time, she would do faculty meetings. They made like squish balls. They made those, ball jars that you can turn upside down, like a lava lamp kind of idea, so that the teachers would have them in their classrooms for students. So if the student was having a struggle, they knew where they could go to get some of the mindfulness tools to be able to calm themselves down or get themselves ready. She also gave them references of music, like we had talked about the music. And now when I walk into elementary classrooms, I'll hear some of that music that I know is the ones that was recommended from a couple years ago.
Is there opportunity in the middle school or high school?
I don't know. The person ended up doing stuff with research and was tied up in a big research project and then was unavailable. So
I know someone trained in mindfulness. He actually went to Tibet. Guy I work with went to Tibet and got trained in it.
Oh wow!
So he's got the thing and
yeah.
the noise. And,
yeah, she would do all of that. I mean, it was amazing.
And he does it all day at one of the high schools in Norwalk. He's
Oh.
just totally devoted to mindfulness.
Nice.
It'd be so great. It seems like we've got it going on in the elementary schools, and if we can try and increase it in the middle and the high school and stuff. And it's not like in lieu of academics. It's just kind of like, I think the philosophy is more like looking at the whole child, and if their physical needs and emotional needs aren't met, the academics, because not all parents are able to, or just whatever's happening in the families and in life and the community and society, you got to look at the whole child, So it's definitely not in lieu of academics. I think George was getting nervous about that. I didn't mean it like that. I'm not a fan of the standardized test, but I realize you got to have some form of measurement or whatever. But it's just.
Yep. Jeff, did you have something?
Yeah, Sheila, do you think that I guess my question is, the state has given us flexibility, right, to address our needs as far as this is concerned.
For this year.
Right. So if we ever get back to a situation where, they move more towards, not move, but come back to standard, I mean, I think this is super important. Would we have the ability to keep this implemented and be, you know what I'm saying, and be able to accommodate the old way of doing things?
Well, I would love to see the SEO piece continue on in our teacher evaluation. The teacher evaluation process for this year, we have all the flexibility, and that was done across the entire state to everybody. I'm not 100% sure what it's going to look like for next year. I've been on a couple of different state meetings in the last couple of weeks, and one of them, they said that next year could be a continuation of this year, or it could be you go back to what you had done last year, but you could, add some things that you felt, the silver linings, like what did you find that was really good from this year, and keep that as a piece of it as well. So teachers might have an SEL goal, but still have an academic goal. The following year, during next school year, the State Department of Ed has a group that they're going to be reevaluating what the teacher evaluation process looks like, and we'll be making revisions to it. So will it look like a combination or something very different? It's yet to be seen. But they did say that we would have some flexibility to next year, whether we continue with this or teachers would have two goals. One could be SEL and one could be academic.
I would imagine it would be, very district by district. It may change. Some districts, haven't been as much we have. Could be vice versa. I would like to see the flexibility to allow us as a district to make the decisions. Hey, we need this still, as opposed to being mandated to do X, Y, or Z.
Well, I know they reach out to the superintendents through the CAPS group, and they have a very strong voice with this, and that was the reason why SEL is here, quite honestly. The superintendents were very, very strong last spring saying we need support for not only our students but our staff.
The byproduct of Finland wasn't necessarily the goal, but the byproduct of addressing it this way was really high academic achievement.
Yeah, I definitely don't think the two are they're not mutually exclusive.
Right.
For sure. And then, like I said, it's about climate, it's about building climate and culture, and you just get a sustainable environment, That's the key. If you're doing it as a standalone thing and push,
right.
If you're doing, it's not going to work.
Right.
It's got to become,
it's integrated.
kind of second nature.
Great. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good job, guys. Thank you.
Very informative. All right, we will move on to old business. I know Joe is going to talk about enrollment.
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Are you doing a presentation?
Well, I gave you. You don't need to move yet because that is just this, but it doesn't show well on the screen, and I just wanted you to see it. I just wanted to touch back, circle back on enrollment. And I want to thank Sheila, actually helped me put this together. Actually, Sheila put this together with Lisa Shishkin, our district data specialist. A couple weeks ago I talked about our numbers, and they're up. We've talked about our numbers have been up. And in further talking with Lisa, to try to pick up from July to where we are now, it seems like it should be really easy. It seems like we should be able to who's in, who's out, and whatnot. But the summer's a really bad time to try to catch enrollment. It's when our student information system is rolling up. It's when kids are coming in, kids are dropping off. Some kids that were finishing credit recovery, left in August, and so it was, it was picking up some abnormalities. I wanted to get something that that made it a little bit more clear. And I think those other numbers are pretty accurate. They're pretty close, but I don't think they're quite as high. But I think it's easier. Those other numbers also included pre-K, which grows as the year goes on, like it always does every year. So Lisa and I thought the best thing to do would be, let's look at when do we report on attendance for the state, because we know that those numbers are fixed. And let's look at where we are. So we report on attendance on October 1st. And then on the last day of school, we have to do a state report. So those numbers are dead on accurate. So the story is pretty much the same, but again, this is only capturing K through 12. It's not picking up the pre-K. This is just K through 12 in district students, so it's not going to include our outplaced students. So if you look at what's happening here, and I'll walk you through the colors. Because what we did was we colored each one to make it easier. That's why I gave it to you as a handout. From the year 17-18 to 18-19 was the last year of decreasing enrollment for the Monroe Public Schools. If you look at the top brown one, okay, that is the last day of school for June of 2018. There was 3112 students. In October, Okay, there was 3,059, so that picked up, so that's the difference from the year before last day of school to the October 1 numbers. So we were down 53 students. Then you look at by the end of the year, we were at 3,060. So we only picked up one student from October 1 to the end of the 18-19 school year. Okay, so we were down a net of 52 students. Again, that's the last time this district has experienced decreasing enrollment. Now you go to the next year. So all I did is I took that bottom chart, that purple one becomes the top purple one on the next one. The last day of 2018-19 with 3,060 students. Now, go into the next year. By October 1, we were up 18 students to 3,078. By the last day of school, we had picked up another 37 students. Again, that's just K through 12. If I would, my other one the other day, I was talking about pre-K students, so you're always going to be picking up more, but this is definitely more finite with K through 12. So if you look at, in the course of that year, we picked up 55 students. Again, take that bottom number, that's the last day of school for 1920. Now, and also, don't forget, we picked up 37 of those students between October 1 and the last day of school were picked up in the midst of COVID. Okay, we went out March 20th. So all the ones I'll talk about now, were all picked up during COVID. So a pickup of 37 students, so a pickup of a total of 55 students in 1920. Again, take that last day of school. Last year we were at 3,115. By October 1, we were up 18 students. I couldn't do last day of school because we're not there yet, but I was able to do it at a point in time. So as of last Monday, we had picked up another 40 students. So a net pickup so far of 58 students this year. Just another way to look at it, I think this provides a little bit more accurate look of just looking at K-12. Look at it at two snapshots where we know exactly how many kids are in our school, because those numbers are usually dead on where they need to be, because those are state reported numbers, October 1 and the last day of school. I just wanted to give another little update to, Nick had kind of mentioned this, and this was this part of this conversation was on the at the Board of Finance meeting the other night, and that's just continuing to look at our elementary enrollment. You see, Monroe Elementary is doing fine. Part of that is just the sheer size of it, but it's tricky. You can't. It would be tough to have a first grade class. There's 3 at 17. If you cut a section out, you got 2, one with 25 and one with 26. It doesn't work very nicely. The areas that we've been most concerned about, we've been talking about, is Quad Hollow, which is the biggest school. And Stepney. This is the group that Nick was talking about. It's actually the second grade, Nick. That right now they would be at 23 students there. These kids, to the point that Nick was making before, they'll be in second grade next year. When they were in kindergarten, their first year of school, they left school in March and went out, synchronously, asynchronously. I mean, they're 5 years old, 5 to 6 years old. So they dealt with a pretty significant disruption their first year of school. Second year of school, which is this year, it's been up and down, hybrid, full in, full out, all over the place. So that's their second year. And now here they are this year. Been working with Lee to look at, and this was part of the conversation with the Board of Finance the other day, was, hey, we're really trying to keep an eye on these numbers, especially in our kindergarten numbers. We got averages of 21, and we still have a ways to go before we know how many people are going to be sending their kids to kindergarten. How many people kept their kids home last year? How many people are going to, sent them to a daycare and then are going to send them back to kindergarten? How many are going to send them to daycare and send them to, first grade if their school had some kind of a program? But one of the things we looked at was, the possibility. I think if this was today, we would look at maybe making the 5th grade much more independent learners, a group of 24, and then making this group, a group of, 18 now. So that's just some of the conversation, that we're having as we continue to watch this. Like I said, it was a conversation with the Board of Finance. They were very receptive to understanding that, hey, we know you have a moving target here, especially in the younger grades, especially in kindergarten. I thought they were, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought they were pretty receptive with that. So I just wanted to keep everyone up to date. These numbers were last updated. These were as of last Monday as well. I'll keep you notes. Yeah. Nick?
Joe, can I ask a question on the first one? This one?
Yep.
So I'm on the last page.
Yep.
So if I'm up in the blue chart.
Yep.
And I look at first grade at the top.
Yep.
That tells me that on the last day of school in June 2020, there were 220 first graders, right?
Yes.
Now, if I go down to the very, very bottom green chart, and I look at this, that's this current year second grade.
Yep.
Right? So that's a gain of 15.
Yep.
And out of those 15, 13 of those were gained just at Fawn Hollow. You went from 96 first graders to 109 at Fawn Hollow. That's almost a 15% increase in one cohort at one school.
Yep.
And if you go along the axis here and you look at the blue, whatever grade they were in at the blue chart at the top, and then move that by 1 down at the bottom, I mean, third grade plus 7, fifth grade plus 16. I mean, it boggles the mind kind of a little bit the type of growth that you're seeing. But I think in these elementary schools, that was kind of exciting, changing the number of sections live on air. But I know that's just a discussion. Obviously nothing that you change on the fly here, set in stone. But I think if you look at the blue, K5, and you look at the blue and you translate it down to the green, and you shift everything over by 1, the distribution of where the kids are coming from is, I think, is almost, to me, is actually more concerning than the total number overall growth, because then we get into the physical space of the classrooms in each of the buildings, which I think is what you had said at the last meeting, that we kind of have to go through the summer and see where we are in September before we start kind of doing those things. But
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even in 12th grade, right? We were talking about this at the last meeting. You don't see that much movement in 12th grade. I mean, 9 kids.
Yep.
So anyway, yes, I did ask about this, and I really do appreciate you coming back and giving us more data, maybe than some of us want. I love it, but but it's really interesting to see to match it up from last year and to go grade level by grade level and breaking it down by school. You really see kind of some of the issues in the physical space needs that we'll meet going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question, Dave.
Joe, this is really good information. Thank you. Can we share this or put this on the website?
Yes.
Share it with Town Hall. This is really powerful.
Absolutely. It's
And
linked
then
to the agenda.
The other thing, what you may want to do, and I know it goes well beyond 2018, but if we can have a line chart showing our staff level going like this and our enrollment level going like this, I think that'd be a powerful image as well to overlay those.
Thanks, Dave.
Great idea.
Agree.
Anybody else have questions on this?
Last thing I just want, just one other update was just on, Nick had mentioned it before, Board of Finance budget update from the other day. I just want to thank those of you that were able to join, just as a without going through everything, just some of the key topics that were hit on there. One was the Fairchild Wheeler settlement. The Board of Finance is looking to to reduce our budget, the $97,000 that we have budgeted for that settlement this year, and pay that run in their in the town budget next year.
Yeah, they would appropriate assigned fund balance.
And the rationale behind that, and it makes sense, was the that's really not that's really not operating expense money for next year. That's money that was already spent. It was spent in the past, so we shouldn't be paying for it out of next year's money. Other topics that came up, health insurance has been a big one. We're hoping to get a little bit more firm of a number for the state partnership plan. I think we are looking at putting in at about 6%. We've gotten some indications it could be a little bit lower than that.
It could be 4 is what we've been told.
Could be 4. They originally told us 10, so you know, and that's what we had budgeted. We had budgeted 10, so hopefully that does come down. There was some conversation about salaries, and just a quick explanation of kind of, you know, a comparison of our teacher salaries and how they compare to the rest of the state, and what that looks like. It's hard to do that exactly, but you know, the question was initially about our starting teacher salaries, and if you look at our starting teacher salaries, they're very competitive. You know, when teachers come here and you compare them, in order to compare them to the rest of the state, we had to go through and get every single contract. I thank Jack, because Jack did 95% of the work on this. What we did do was we looked at all the Durg A and B schools, all the schools in Fairfield County. Yeah, that was it. All the schools in Fairfield County, or all the districts in Fairfield County, and then all the Durg A and B districts in the state, knowing that that's probably where salaries are going to be the highest. There are some, you know, there are some outliers actually in that we saw. So it may not be a fully comprehensive understanding, but our teachers, the starting salaries are very competitive. You know, up in there around 3rd or 4th in amongst that group, which I would imagine is amongst that group in the state. It doesn't really explain the driver in the budget though when it comes to salaries, because our top, what we call our top 6 steps, or our bottom 6 steps, our starting salaries, like I said, they're competitive. We have 30 staff members on those 6 staff. I'm sorry, on those 6 steps. We have 180 on the last.
On the last.
That's
what I've tried to explain to them. Joe, it's not hard if they'll just listen to the ladder effect, but they don't want to listen to the fact that any contract, police, teach, there's a ladder, there's rungs. And Monroe, to reach the top step, is how many rungs on the 6th year?
It's experience of 15, so it's 16 years.
Right, so now go to Trumbull. What's their top? Go to Fairfield.
Yeah.
And it's really not.
It's not easy to.
They just.
It's not easy to do
apples
apples to apples. And when when you do the overlay with the top tier,
right,
we fall in the middle of the.
Which is what the CEA came out and said in the beginning of all of this, that we weren't the top, we were in the middle.
Yeah, yeah. There was a little bit of conversation just about the state pension plan. It wasn't really a lot of action item on that. It's just, you know, if the state ever pushes it down to the city, down to the towns. Enrollment, which I just discussed there. There were some questions from some of the members about, you know, reinstatement of positions that we had lost, you know, as a result of the reductions last year. What some of our plans were to try to get some of those back, which have been addressed in this budget. And then there were some questions on the capital budget. Those are the key highlights. Nick?
I just wanted to add one thing. It was a little frustrating at the meeting being there. I did have a lot I wanted to say, but I think our chair and our superintendent did a very good job. I did want to mention one item about the salaries, though. There was an article, I think, in CT EdWatch that talked about the upcoming enrollment for teacher education preparation programs at institutions of higher education. And a lot of people are dropping out of those programs. And there are certain areas in Connecticut right now that are shortage areas.
There are many shortage areas.
And I think, I'm not trying to predict what's going to happen to teaching post-COVID, but if you look at some of the enrollments in the programs where your teachers are coming out of and they're down, applications are down, people are coming out, when you look at our starting salaries and you talk about them being competitive, we have to keep them competitive because we want to attract the best people. Not only attract them, but retain them. And I think this argument about having, you know, steps 1 through 6 be some of the higher ones in Durg B is important, because that's when your starting teachers come in. And then if it starts to even out and go to the median as you go from 7 to 15, That's how it should be done, because you want the best teachers here, and the pool is getting smaller.
And smaller. Every
And
year.
the profession, at least just from what I happen to read on these different, EdWatch and there's another one too, people are retiring at high rates. Not perhaps here in Monroe. I mean, this is just one data point over the whole state and over the whole region, but there's a high retirement rate because of what this year was like for a lot of people.
Sure.
So a lot of retirements, a smaller pool of people going into higher education programs to become teachers. What happens in 2 to 3 years in areas where in Connecticut today there are already shortage areas, especially at the secondary level with physics, math, world language,
Yep.
that's already down. So I really wanted to say that the other night, and I said it now, and thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's important. Can I just make-
Yes.
I think what Nick just said is important. Have we done an assessment of where we're at with those areas that there may be shortages, and what our retention rate has been, and
We have a very high retention rate. I mean, I
and
don't
in terms
I
of
just
the tenure of the teachers that are in those roles, or there's going to be roles we're going to need to be recruiting for in the short term.
Not in the short term right now, but there's a few that are on the horizon that I'm looking at that I don't want to out people that I know that are getting ready to retire in a few years, but there's a few that give me pause, especially when you get into the sciences, which the sciences
The higher level, yeah.
you have different. You're not just a certified science teacher. You're a certified general science teacher. You're a certified biology teacher. You're a certified chemistry teacher. You're a certified physics teacher. It gets very difficult. World language gets very difficult.
And that's just
French.
that's not the fault of the teacher. That's a certification of the state.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that's what you need to do to teach it.
Yep.
I'm just saying, we see needs coming down
Definitely
the
keep
road,
an eye on
and
it.
if there's
That's a good point.
If there's ways though that we can, I mean, teachers love their profession, right?
Yep.
They don't get into it specifically for the money,
Yep.
right? But to Nick's point, it helps to have competitive rates at those entry level years. But if there's things that we can do to improve our recruiting, or any kind of the internship programs and the college days and things like that. If there's key areas that we're going to be looking.
Yeah, Jack's actually getting ready for a recruiting fair Wednesday. Yeah.
Anybody else, David?
Just a comment, Joe, to your staff, a lot of people that are in the audience here, when I signed on to that Board of Finance meeting and looked at the grid of everybody that was on the meeting, it was all Board of Ed, and it was powerful. So thank you all for being on that and available. It shows your dedication and the support of the budget. I was really impressed in that first few seconds of signing on and seeing it was all of us. So thank you. That's really important.
Thanks, Dave. That's good. That's a good point.
Anybody else? All right. We will move on to new business. First up is the ratification of the secretary's contract, and I know Shannon has the motion.
Okay, I make a motion to provide funding for and to otherwise accept and approve in full the tentative agreement between the board and the Secretaries Union for a successor collective bargaining agreement for the duration of and under the terms of the tentative agreement. Can I make this all in one?
Yeah.
I further move to delegate the board chair, Donna Lane, the authority to execute the final contract document on behalf of the board.
Second. Thank you, Jerry. Discussion on this? All right,
I'd just
Ken.
like to thank Donna and Alan for sitting on it and helping out. Thank you.
All right, hearing none, all in favor? Great, thank you, motion passes. Next up is the discussion and approval of our Jockey Hollow Recognition Night and our Massac High School graduation evening. The dates are in here, so Joe, do you want to discuss the dates so we can make a motion?
Yeah, let me, and if Mike and Steve, if you guys want to just kind of come up in case anyone has any questions. This is, guess it's a good problem to have, and hopefully we are talking about doing a somewhat more traditional graduation ceremony. We are still waiting on guidance. I know the State Department of Ed and the Department of Public Health is is putting together some guidance relating to proms and graduations right now. So, we would like to get something on the books so families can start planning. We start getting questions usually right after New Year's Day about when is graduation. So we do want to kind of get that out there. So what we're looking to do for right now is tentatively schedule the Jockey Hollow ceremony on Monday, June 7th with a rain date of June 8th. And then the Massac graduation on June 9th with a rain date of June 10th. That provides us a little bit of flexibility. Usually we would do, in most years, we would do the day before the last day of school for Massac and the day before that for Jockey Hollow. We would have both the gym and the outside set up for Massac. Jockey Hollow always did it inside. What I would propose we do, if weather permitting, and this is why we're trying to give ourselves a little bit of leeway here, is if we do get inclement weather, the next day we know is going to be beautiful, then we just move it and do Jockey Hollow outside and do Massac outside. If by chance we see that Monday and Tuesday or Wednesday and Thursday or Monday through Thursday is going to be a complete washout and we're still have some kind of constraints by DPH or whatnot, we break the ceremonies up in half and do the first half of the alphabet Monday night and the second half Tuesday night, and same thing at the high school. The only tricky scenario is if we get a bad weather night, it says it's going to be bad for 2 nights, and we get a bad weather night one night, and then it changes, and we do one group inside and the other group outside, but we can't account for every possible scenario given this. And who knows, we'll see what the guidance comes out, but we wanted to get something on the board. So I would say, for the purposes of this, the idea is Monday, June 7th, for Jockey Hollow with a quote-unquote rain date of June 8th, and Wednesday, June 9th with a quote-unquote rain date of June 10th for Massac. Is that good enough, guys?
And you are planning for both scenarios of more traditional, and I'll say more traditional because it won't be full traditional, and still a drive-through depending on the results of what they are. Everybody says.
With these scenarios leaning towards the more traditional, yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But I think it's important that everybody knows that they're expecting one, and
it could be a drive-through. I understand
it could be. So you just need all those scenarios are being
on the table.
On the table, but they're preparing for both scenarios. So they're doing a lot of work because they have to prepare for both, not knowing what it is. All right, so do I have a motion to approve the dates for Jockey Hollow Recognition Night and Massac High School graduation as decided at tonight's meeting? Shannon? Jerry? Any discussion on these? David?
Just to add in the flexibility given to the superintendent for those different scenarios.
Yes.
I think we all agree on that.
Absolutely. Christine?
If students are remote, will they still be able to attend the in-person?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good clarification.
Anybody else? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Thank you, motion passes. Next up is the request for 2 Massac remote learning days. And this will be a vote anticipated. The first one is Wednesday, April 28th, and it's requesting a remote day for grades 11 and 12 as the 9th and 10th graders are taking the PSATs in person. And then the second date is Wednesday, May 26th, and that's going to be a remote day for the 9th and 10th graders and possibly 11th, and that's going to be the senior capstone presentations. Do I have a motion to approve April 28th for the 11th and 12th graders and May 26th for the 9th and 10th graders and possibly 11th graders as remote asynchronous days? Shannon? Do I have a
I'm
second?
awake now.
Christine? Christine, you did the second?
Yep.
Any discussion on these? All right, hearing none, all in favor? Great, motion passes.
Thank you.
Next, thank you. Next up, we have a policy for first review, and this is policy 3313.1, which is local purchasing. George, did you want to discuss this?
Yeah, this is a very minor change. It just, this is our local purchasing policy, which basically says that we will try to purchase from local sources as opposed to going outside where possible, as defined by the policy around bids and purchasing. So this policy just essentially ties local purchasing to the overall bids and quotations policy, which is 3323.
Great. Does anybody have any questions on that? David?
George, I didn't get the chance to look at 3323, but I'm just looking at the last line of this. Are we obligated to take the lowest bid by either this policy or the larger policy?
That's where qualified comes in. So we can make a judgment as to, you know, yes, we have to take the lowest bid, but it's the lowest qualified bid. So.
Okay. All right. That's good, because I don't want our hands tied by always taking the lowest bidder.
Right.
Maybe a vendor that we adamantly have had bad experience with or something like
Right.
that. So okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Other questions? All right, hearing none, this will be on our board agenda the next time as a vote anticipated. Does anybody have anything else before we adjourn this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Jerry. Do I have a second? Christine, all in favor? Thank you. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.